Good morning, students. Today we are going to read Discovering Tut. The Saga Continues, written by A.R. Williams. This chapter is about the last heir of powerful Pharaoh dynasty, Tutankhamun, who died when he was teenager. After ruling for 9 years, he died in mysterious way. So, this chapter throws light over the possible mysteries that is related to his death. Example, the curse, where his tomb lies, his life, and ultimately death. Egyptians believe that there is a life after death, and that is the reason why pharaohs were buried with wealth and everyday use items. So, let's start reading. He was a teenager when he died, the last heir of a powerful family that had ruled Egypt and its empire for centuries. He was laid to rest, laden with gold, and eventually forgotten. Since the discovery of his tomb in 1922, the modern world has speculated about what happened to him, with murder being the most extreme possibility. Now, leaving his tomb for the first time in almost 80 years, Tut has undergone a CT scan that offers new clues about his life and death and provides precise data for an accurate forensic reconstruction of the boyish pharaoh. See, Tut, when he died, was teenager. He was the last successor of his powerful pharaoh dynasty, which ruled Egypt. He was laid on rest, heavily loaded with gold. His tomb was discovered in 1922, which made the world raise a question about what happened to him, whether he had been murdered. After almost 80 years, his body was about to undergo a CT scan, which would give new information about his life and death. His face would be recreated with the help of a procedure called forensic reconstruction. So, टुट जो था एक टीनेजर था और वो क्या था, अपनी टीन्स में ही उसकी डेथ हो गई थी और अब उसकी क्या है, उसकी डेथ पे क्वेश्चंस उठने लगे हैं कि उसकी डेथ हुई कैसे। 1922 में उसका क्या है, उसकी टॉम, उसकी कबर डिस्कवर हुई है और जिससे क्या है, वर्ड पूरे क्वेश्चंस में है कि वो उसकी डेथ कैसे हुई है, उसका मर्डर हुआ है या कैसे डेथ हुई है उसकी। और वो क्या था, उसने इजिप्ट पे रूल किया था पूरे 9 years. नेक्स्ट इज an angry wind stirred up ghostly just devils as King Tut was taken from his resting place in the ancient cemetery, Egyptian cemetery known as the Valley of the Kings. Dark, bellied clouds had scooted across the desert sky all day, and now were wheeling the stars in cascade grey. It was 6 on 5th Jan 2005. The world's most famous mummy glided headfirst into CT scanner, brought here to probe the lingering medical mysteries of the little understood young ruler who died more than 3,300 years ago. See, a fast, strange wind was blowing as King Tut's body was taken from his grave called Valleys of King, an ancient Egyptian cemetery. Dark clouds moved across the desert. On 5th Jan at 6 p.m., King Tut's mummy, which is world's most famous mummy, was placed in CT scanner to investigate the mystery about his death. All afternoon, the usual line of tourists from around the world has descended into the cramped, rock-cut tomb, some 26 feet underground, to pay their respects. They gazed at the murals on the walls of burial chamber and peered at Tut's gilded face, the most striking feature of his mummy-shaped outer coffin lid. Some visitors read from guidebooks in a whisper. Others stood silently, perhaps pondering Tut's untimely death in his late teens, or wondering with a shiver if the Pharaoh's curse, death, or misfortune falling upon those who disturbed him was really true. So, tourists visited underground rock cut tomb to pay respect to the king. Many people stuffed into small tomb and took a look at the face of Tut that had been painted with gold. Some visitors read the guidebooks while others stood silently, wondering about his untimely death in his teen years. Some might also be wondering about the curse of the pharaoh. Next is, the mummy is in very bad condition because of what Carter did in 1920s, said Zahi Hawass, Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, as he leaned over the body for a long first look. Carter Howard Carter, that is, was the British archaeologist who in 1922 discovered Tut's tomb after years of futile searching. Its contents, though hastily ransacked in antiquity, were surprisingly complete. They remain the richest royal collection ever found and have become part of Pharaoh's legend. Stunning artifacts in gold, their eternal brilliance meant to guarantee resurrection, caused a sensation at the time of discovery and still get the most attention. But Tut was also buried with everyday things he would want in afterlife. Board games, a bronze razor, linen undergarments, cases of food and wine. Zahi Hawass, Secretary General of Egypt, leaned over the body to have a look. He said that mummy was in bad condition due to Howard Carter. What Howard Carter did with mummy in 1920, he discovered King's tomb in 1922 after a long search. So, the valuable treasures of Tut has been explored earlier that were surprisingly complete. Treasure found at Tut's grave is richest and known as Pharaoh's legend. It has artifacts in gold. Tut was also buried with like things of daily use, razor, games, boxes of food, wine, etc., which he could use in next life. अब क्या है, ये एक राज की बात ही थी, कुछ मिस्ट्री ही थी जो क्या है टुट की लाइफ से जुड़ी हुई थी। और उनकी क्या है, ये रिचुअल था कि जो मरता उनके साथ ये चीज़ें भी दफना देते हैं वो। और वो क्या थे, उन्होंने क्या है इस चीज़ को फिर से सर्च करना शुरू किया इस चीज़ के बारे में। और उन्होंने क्या फाइंड किया, टुट की जो बॉडी के साथ क्या था, उन्होंने ये चीज़ें जो नेसेसिटीज़ थी वो भी क्या थी वहाँ रखी थी उसकी डेड बॉडी के साथ। आफ्टर मंथ्स ऑफ केयरफुली रिकॉर्डिंग द pharaoh's funerary, treasures, Carter began investigating his three nested coffins. Opening the first, he found a shroud adorned with garlands of willow and olive leaves, wild celery, lotus petals, and cornflowers, the faded evidence of a burial in March or April. When he finally reached the mummy, though he ran into trouble. The ritual resins had hardened, cementing to the bottom of his solid gold coffin. No amount of legitimate force could move them. Carter wrote later what was to be done. Now, Carter began investigating three coffins. In first coffin means cover. In first